As we begin a new quad, lots of people are asking, what does a typical day look like for an SDLP teacher? So I asked a few of our Quad 1 teachers to describe their typical day, what they did, how they started their day, how they organized their time, and some very generous people shared their thinking.
Typical day in DLP, what I'll do is I will sign in first thing in the morning and I will check my email to see if students have emailed me in the course. I'll also check my Gmail and I'll check Google Hangouts because oftentimes students will message me there as well and see if there's any issues I need to kind of resolve before the start of class. And oftentimes students will ask questions over the course of the evening. So I try to get those resolved as quickly as possible. Then what I do is I take my lesson plan for the day. I usually have it in a Google Doc, and I paste it into um, the activity feed here so that students have a copy of what we're working on that day. And usually a day starts with a couple of videos in the 8:15 to kind of 8:30 range, or maybe an article that I want them to read that I want to have a discussion about. Usually these are touching on things like science and society and technology and society kinds of things so that we can have a little bit of a discussion at our morning check-in in the 8:30 to 8:40 range. Usually after that, I have a live lesson. They can run anywhere between 10 and 20 minutes. Sometimes they run a little bit longer. After that, I'll have some students do some practice and check their answers, or I might have them run a simulation in groups or partners or something like that. Okay, we usually check in again before lunch and then break for our lunch break, nutrition break at 10:30. They'll come back, watch a couple more videos to again kind of prompt some discussion. We'll have another live lesson in the afternoon. And then more practice questions, and then we typically end a day with either an assignment or a case study, or most often an exit quiz, just to make sure students had kind of grasped the concepts for that day. So students come down into this playlist here, and they have links to everything we're working on that day. So the videos that we're going to watch, the articles that we're going to read, the simulations. I try to put a link to the practice questions that we're going to work on, and from there I like to have a link to the answers, and a lot of these are care of my wonderful department members who had these all kind of pre-made and ready to go. So I was able to copy a lot of things over from them so students can kind of check their answers as they're working. And then while students are working on these, I'm usually doing attendance. I'm working on contacting students, so if they aren't logged in, I'll be calling home in those moments, and maybe marking some things from the previous day or returning some work from the previous day. And usually there's a few students who need to kind of be brought off to the side to work on things. So we might do like a breakout room to work on a specific problem they might be having on one of the assignments. And then we'll kind of rejoin the group afterwards. And again, just doing a lot of checking in and kind of updating things throughout the day. So that's what a typical day looks like in DLP for me.
Hello, this video is for Jill. I'm just going to answer the questions that you have asked me for. So, first thing I do is I start every day with a 30-minute asynchronous activity of some sort, just something to get their minds on, something that's usually a bit more fun, so they're kind of stoked for the day. I don't start my daily meeting at 8:30 because teenagers, getting them in front of the computer at 8:30 seemed difficult. So I moved my daily meeting to 9 o'clock, but always in the morning they have an asynchronous activity that they do. And I tell them that I'm looking at all of them. Sometimes it's usually random. I ask them to share it with me after, or sometimes I just have them discuss whatever they did in breakout groups, and then I can drop in and kind of have some conversations and do some observations of the things that I see. Oh my gosh, I'm already at 52 seconds. I'm sorry. Um, when do I plan? Well, this last quad was easy because I only had one course. So I had course 2, so I had a good solid 4 days before I even started. So I would plan the first chunk, and then when that chunk was done, I'd have another week off or whatever, and then I would plan the next chunk, and I would just go from there. You got to kind of keep on your toes a little bit because what you may work out in your head, something that would take a certain amount of time, doesn't always, and also sometimes the students need more work on something, so it's just kind of you've got to be able to keep on your toes a little bit, depending on your class. And what you do when the kids work asynchronously. When they're working asynchronously, I'm always on the computer, ready to answer emails or anything that they need. At the end of the day, during that learning block 3, I started with a full hour, an office hour, where I would just have like an open bongo meet and they could jump in if they need to. But near the end, I found that they weren't really utilizing that too much, and they were more apt to send me an email as opposed to dropping in. So I changed it to half an hour, and some students would drop in then. But usually asynchronous time is when I'm marking or trying to catch up, basically. And I think that's all you need. If you need anything else, let me know.
So you're wondering what a day in the life of a DLP teacher is like? Well, this is my typical day. I usually arrive to school around 7:45, and the first thing I do is get set up at my desk, open up my Chromebook, and I don't know if it's my Chromebook or the internet, but it takes a long time to open up all of my tabs in the morning. So I slowly sip my coffee as I'm getting ready for the day, and then by 8 o'clock, I'm ready to start getting organized for the day. I don't have my first synchronous Google Meet with my class until 9 o'clock. It gives them a little time to check their email and check their D2L, and me as well. So from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock, I'm checking my emails, I'm checking D2L notifications, and depending on how organized I am that day or that week, maybe I'm adding some last minute tweaks to my lesson for the day, posting it on the D2L. If I've been organized, I've already posted the lesson and any discussion posts or anything like that the day before, and I just need to hit visible, and then I'm ready to go, but it depends on the day. Then from 9 to 10 a.m., we have our whole class Google Meet lesson for the day. So at this point, I'm delivering my lesson, I'm checking for understanding, I'm explaining tasks for the day. I usually start out with a Jamboard that maybe has a fun question on it for the day, a Four Corners activity or something like that to check for attendance and just make sure everyone's fully engaged in the lesson. We might do things like watch videos and do polls in the chat or just ask questions through the chat, have discussions, teach a lesson through a slideshow, or I might present my screen to show them how they're going to complete a task for the day. My students usually come to my Google Meet early, around 8:30, and they spend half an hour chatting and just hanging out until the class starts. And then when the class is done at 10, I leave the Google Meet open. I just mute myself and turn off my camera. And then I'm there for the rest of the day if they need to come in and check things or ask for questions. And so from around 10 to 11 and onwards, I'm in office hours. I'm usually walking students through their task for the day. So right after our Google Meet, that's when usually they're opening up the document or the video or the discussion for the day. And that's usually right after the Google Meet is when they'll come back to the Google Meet and ask questions right away. This is also when I would be conferencing. I luckily had an EA for my last class. So she was with us from 10:30 until 1. So I'd be checking in with her either on the phone or over email. And we would be deciding how we were going to divide up our tasks for the day. So I'd usually be asking her to either follow up with some students that she had been working with or to contact students who were absent that morning. This time from 10 to 11, the first half of the quadmester, I was calling any student who didn't attend that morning every single day. But I had a smaller class, so this was manageable. And then later on in the quadmester, it was more solidified who was coming to class and who wasn't. So I would have time to look at their tasks from the previous day, do some marking, planning for the next day, and things like that. Somewhere around 11 or 12, I would have lunch and just continue on with my work for the day. And then from 12:30 to 1 and 1 to 1:30, I had small group Google Meets. So I had, like I said, I had a smaller class, so I could divide them up into two and just do smaller classes in the afternoon. And these classes were often supplemental to whatever the main class of the day was. So sometimes we did kind of mini lessons. Sometimes we did workshops on, how to use a mapping program or how to create a Google site or, really anything. We did conferences during these times and sometimes presentations as well. And then the last chunk of the day, 1:30 to 2:15, is when I would be preparing my lesson for the next day. Like I said, if I'm organized and I have time that day, I'll make sure that it's all ready to go and posted for the next day. And then the next day I would just have to press visible. This is also the time when I would, if I could, catch up on the D2L for the SDLP and check the discussions there, and maybe catch up on any recordings of webinars that I had missed, and wrap up for the day. So that's what my day looks like in the SDLP, and I hope you have a great day.
Hi there. A day in the DLP for me tends to be pretty structured, which I find the students are also very appreciative of. Usually I post the agenda for the day as a scheduled post around 8 o'clock in the morning, so they can look at it even before school starts. I open up my Google Meet around 8:15, and that meet is on all day for students to jump in and out of during asynchronous time if they have a question. At 8:30 to 9, I give my students a small activity to do on their own at home, so that I can respond to emails and get ready for the day. I find that students are really, really, really thankful that the day starts at 9 instead of 8:30. So at 9 o'clock is our first synchronous block where I usually teach a lesson and we have discussions and talk about math. And that usually ends around 10, where I let them go again to practice on their own and absorb that information and process that information and try some practice questions themselves. We go through lunch, and again, I am on the meet for them between 11:15 and 12:30-ish if they have a question about the morning. And 12:30 is when I have my second synchronous block for the day, where we might do another lesson if it's a content heavy day, or another activity or discussion based on what's happening. Again, I find that students are very thankful that they have the flexibility in the middle of their day to look at the work from the morning or previous days and have lunch at a more appropriate time rather than 10:30, which we are stuck with. That lesson is usually shorter and usually ends around 1 o'clock, 1:15. And that's time for them to go back on their own and absorb that information. So I stay on the meet in case anybody wants to pop in and out. And then at 2:15, I close the meet and get ready for the next day to do it all over again. Let me know if you have any questions. I can be reached at linlin_lee at wrdsb.ca. Thanks. Good luck. You're going to love it.